civilian tactics, kind of the Second Amendment as a whole and where we're at and where our progress can head. Okay, so this is speaking to just Americans, people that are arming themselves, that are getting body armor, night vision, maybe they're just concealed carrying, whatever it is. And what I want to talk about is civilian tactics. And the first point I want to make is when we look at the right to bear arms and the Second Amendment as a whole, civilian tactics are gradually what we're going to have to square up with and say, yeah, we need to develop that. And why I say that is, if we have all this equipment and we have all these things, we should know how to use it, okay? Now, the reason we're having a hard time squaring up with this, and I totally understand it, is because early on in the 2000s, there was this big, oh, militias, 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 and nobody has uttered that word since then because it is extremely cringy. And the reason that it's extremely cringy is they focus so much on militia, the right to bear arms, and they missed one really, 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 really crucial part: well-regulated. And when I say well-regulated, I do not mean by the government or an overseeing body, but what I mean is well-regulated, okay? When you look at somebody and you say, yeah, that's a well-regulated person, or that person is, well-regulated, what you're looking at is, hey, they're balanced. They regulate themselves. They think through things. So it's so crucial for us as we look, and we don't really like going back to that term militia, and it's just, but we believe in the Second Amendment, but that term's like, nobody really wants to say it, okay? And the reason for that is it was not well regulated. The people that were doing it and it was a thing was extremely unregulated. Now we look at the military, and this is how I apply this. The military has all types of regulations that are given to you by the military. Okay? A certain way you got to cut your hair, a certain way you got to act, ways you respond, positions you stand at when NCOs address you. All sorts of different things. There are regulations in the way that you act. There are regulations in the way that you physically perform. There are regulations in the way that you shoot. There are regulations for days, okay? The military is well regulated, okay? Now, when we look at that and we apply that to where we're headed, I would say, as a whole, the industry has gotten much better at being well regulated. The skill of practical shooting. People are held to a much higher, well-regulated standard for concealed carrying, for shooting, and that is not done by any government entity. That has been done by cultural change, by people pushing the bar, by these companies going out there and saying, no, you can do better than that. You should do better than that. Think about this, push this, education, training, and performance, right? So that is where, when we look at civilian tactics, why we go, we don't really talk about that, is because it was done very poorly early on, and militias just put a bad taste in our mouth, in everyone's mouth. And that's the reality of it, whether we like it or not. That's why nobody really utters the M word, militias. So moving on, let's now that we kind of understand why the idea of civilians knowing tactics has gotten extremely cringy, it's because of that. Is because a very non-regulated, non-well-regulated, and very illegitimate group of militias were kind of shown to the world, and everyone went, oh, that's what that is? So, civilian tactics, okay? As we start to look at us getting more well-regulated in the gear that we own, in the rifles that we own, in our abilities to shoot that equipment and use that equipment, well-regulated in the instructors and the people that are pushing information, whether it be tactical, whatever, we're starting to move towards that more well-regulated group of people, which is really, really good and important and a win for the gun industry and the Second Amendment as a whole. But what I want to talk about today is how we have to start to shift our view and start to go, hey, the tactics that me as a civilian might need to know are going to be different than maybe what's available or what's being taught, okay? And this all stems from this cringy, weird movement that was going on with the militias early in the 2000s, and everyone was like, ugh, okay? So now let's define the term tactics, because that's what we're going to be talking about today, and that's what's important to look at is tactics, okay? tactics, one thing I want to just start off by saying, because we have this so often where we get reality check, your sub-second draw won't do this, reality check, if you can't move, da-da-da-da, and there's a lot of these reality checks that get posted, and a lot of them are very true, but here's one that I want to say, okay? And this goes out to everybody. This includes our high-speed military dudes and our awesome law enforcement guys and all the people that have carried a gun for a living, okay? A good tactic applied in the improper objective or environment or situation is in fact a bad tactic, okay? Don't believe me? Here's some simple examples. A SWAT guy using a frag grenade to clear a room. That is, overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan, for a lot of situations, a good tactic. A good tactic applied in the wrong environment, situation, and objective is in fact a bad tactic, okay? So a SWAT guy's environment, the United States, in houses that have soft walls, and lots of innocent people. So that's his environment, his situation, right? He's entering a room trying to hopefully not have to use lethal force to kill that person. So that's why, again, a flashbang is going to be used. And then objectives, right? His objective is not to eliminate that threat. He's trying to go in there and get the person to give up, okay? If that doesn't happen, then lethal force is on the table. Me as a concealed carry person, I do not have the ability to look at hostile intent. Somebody going up and messing with my car, I don't immediately go, oh my God, he's planting an IED on my car, draw and shoot him, right? But overseas, if I see somebody planting an IED, hostile intent, there's been times where ROEs say, go to town, okay? So again, I just want to reiterate that. A good tactic applied in the improper environment, situation, or objective is in fact a bad tactic, okay? So now when we translate that into the civilian world, right? One example I want to use is I posted a video recently, and again, this is not to call anybody out. I actually am very thankful to the guy that commented this because it got me going on this train of thought. I think it's valuable. I shot through a windshield, basically at a target about 5 yards away, got out of the car, scanned, and then ran away, right? And this guy said, this is why I carry a rifle in my car, because a 9mm hollow point's not going to do the trick. As a civilian and a concealed carrier, why I'm doing that drill or why I think that's valuable, okay? Here's my case for why it's valuable. If I have a situation where I deem that somebody's walking up on my vehicle and they have a gun in their hand and they start to raise it, and they're pointing it at me or my wife or somebody, I think, given the proper technique of shooting through a windshield, there is a situation where I would consider doing it because it is going to basically disrupt that person's OODA loop. It doesn't mean that I'm going to eliminate the threat. It doesn't mean that they're not going to shoot back. But what it does mean is that it's going to force them to probably do a couple different things. Shoot back, but also probably move. My guess is they're not just going to get shots fired at them and be like, whatever. They're probably going to drop down below and try and take cover, which will give me a second to either drive away or get out of my vehicle and try and get that threat away from whatever, okay? So, the proper way to shoot through a windshield, press that muzzle up as close as you can to the glass, blow a hole through the glass, and then use that as a little firing port to shoot through, right? Do I suggest sitting in the car and just shooting through your windshield willy-nilly? No, because each time you have to make a new penetration of that windshield, it's going to take 2 or 3 rounds to do that. Those rounds are, let's say, slightly unpredictable. But it is something to think about, okay? Now, let's look at the application of the guy saying, this is why I don't use handguns, I just want to carry a rifle. That is a very difficult application for me, and here's why. It does not fit my practicality to leave a loaded rifle with my optic on, one in the chamber, ready to go, right here, okay? If I do have to use it, it's going to be slower. It's going to be slower than me just drawing, bringing the handgun out and going. It's going to be less maneuverable. It's also going to look worse in court. Okay, if I have my Glock 17 and I just say the reason I carry this is the exact same thing that law enforcement uses, that's going to look a little bit better than in court when I have, even if it's an AR pistol, I bring it up and they look at it and it's my 10-3 rifle, 30 round mags with 5.56. Prosecutors are going to have a field day with that. That's just the reality of it. Okay, and to me, that does not tactically fit the application. Now, when I was overseas, guess what I carried right next to me in the driver's seat of either my Max Pro or my Land Cruiser? I carried my M4 with one in the chamber and ready to go. And the reason for that is all the vehicles that we were using, with the exception of like one when we went into a very non-hostile area or less hostile area, had bulletproof glass. So I was not going to pull up my M4 and shoot through the windshield of my car. No. That was there just in case we stopped, did something, and I needed to pull security from my driver's seat. I could pop my door open of our Land Cruiser, lean out, and pull security with my rifle. Okay, so that application, that was a good tactic for us overseas. Now here in the United States, given my situation, my environment, and my objectives of currently, it doesn't fit. Okay. Furthermore, that person kind of somebody else went back and forth with them, and basically the guy was like, "Well, so and so is a experienced da 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 da. They've been overseas and da 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 da." Okay, so if we're going to cite experience, then I want to know a specific situation where this person shot with a hollow point through a windshield and found it to be useless as a concealed carry person. I want that articulated to me. And this kind of leads into my next point. It is important. There's a couple different jobs that we have on the tactics side if we're teaching tactics. Maybe we have a background in law enforcement or military. It is our job, and I do this all the time, it is our job to take our experiences, our tactics, and all of these things that we use and figure out how we can translate them to be of value to the everyday civilian in their concealed carry or in hypothetical, without rule of law, civil unrest scenarios, okay? And I'm all for it. You know, law enforcement teaching law enforcement how they did it, great. That's an objective-based, hey, our jobs are the same, teach us how you did it. Or if I just go, hey, I just want to learn how Rangers clear rooms. Just for my experience, I want to see how 2-man, 3-man, 4-man, I want to learn how you guys clear rooms. It's not me saying, hey, stop teaching classes with military tactics. No, 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 no. But it's me wanting to start to have people to look at the idea, that same statement. A good tactic applied in the wrong environment or the wrong objective or the wrong situation is in fact a bad tactic, okay? And if we don't acknowledge that, there's a very weird dynamic that's going to keep happening in the shooting world, and we're going to see a split. Because you're going to see civilians go, they're going to wake up and they're going, this doesn't totally fit, so it's going to, in their eyes, delegitimize the experiences and the skill of the military or law enforcement shooter. So if we can't start to go, hey, as instructors, we can teach people, but we need to figure out ways that we can translate it and make it useful to them to the best of our abilities. And then civilians or people that are taking these classes ask these difficult questions. If a question comes to your head and says like, well, I don't have an outer cordon when I'm you know, if I'm doing this hypothetically and without rule of law, my objective is I'm seeking cover and concealment to get inside of a house to lay low and not get in gunfights, versus the military application is to go in there, eliminate threats, and gather intel. Well, those are two completely different environments, situations, and objectives, okay? So we need to be willing to ask those questions, and instructors that shy away from those questions and don't have simple answers. One of the answers that I had for one of our kind of one-man CQB classes was, well, why would we ever be going in or doing this? And I basically said, well, you wouldn't. You would, as a civilian, if you hear this and you don't know where the threat is, odds are you're not going to go in there and start clearing rooms and doing all this stuff because you don't have enough information or support to understand that situation. But I do think being able to do this in a training at an advanced level, meaning clearing multiple different areas with low light and doing all this stuff, I think that makes what you might need to do, i.e. clear one room in search of something, much easier, okay? And so there are those answers that we can articulate by why we're doing this. It doesn't always have to be the most realistic, awesome situation, right? Limitations to simulations, okay? There's value in still learning military tactics. There's values in that stuff. It helps us identify what's going to work for us. But what's crucial is that as a civilian, you start facing up with the reason behind why you own this stuff. And you start looking at what are the most likely and most deadly courses of action for why you would need to use this equipment. And make sure that what you're learning fits that, okay? So I think that's just really, really important, guys. And again, I just want to reiterate, this is not to call anybody out or to throw shade at people. People that are training and taking the stuff that they learned in the military and teaching it the exact same way, I'm totally fine with that. What I don't like, though, is I don't like civilians taking that stuff and saying, yep, this fits perfectly into my application. This tactic that this Army guy is doing, or this Marine's doing, or this SWAT guy is doing fits perfectly into my my world. And the reason for that and why that doesn't work, guys, is you as a civilian have significantly less supply. You don't have close air support. You don't have grenade launchers. You don't have belt feds. You don't have medevacs. You don't have basically people with insane medical training at your immediate disposal. You don't have so many different things, right? You don't have outer cordons, you don't have all this stuff. And it would be foolish not to take that into account and start to look at, hey, maybe we need to do things or think about doing things a little bit differently. So what I want to leave you guys with is a good tactic applied to the wrong situation, environment, or objective is in danger of becoming a very poor tactic.